Hi everyone, my name is Meredith. I am one of the Husqvarna Viking educators, and I am very excited. We are starting a new year and we're going to start some new types of videos that we are creating for you all. So we are going to start out doing a block of the month for 2026. I say start out. We're going to do a block of the month for 2026. So every month this year, I will have a video on how to create the Sweet Dreams Quilt. It is a quilt that can be found on the Creative 8 website, and we will have it linked as well in the description for you to access it. But it is kind of like a sampler quilt. It's a really neat quilt that makes you use all of these different techniques that you may not use on the regular when you're making quilts. But I'm going to add my own little spin to some of them as well so that you can start to use the techniques on your machine to elevate these blocks even more. So we're going to start out pretty simple in January. We are going to do the rail fence blocks. And if you're not familiar with rail fence, it is basically like 3 strips or more sewn together, or it's how you sew them together if you've got multiple blocks, things like that. So in the Sweet Dreams quilt, there is 3 different rail fence blocks within the quilt, but they're all different. So one of them is 3 rail fence blocks together. One of them is just a rail fence with 3 strips. And then another one is 4, and you twist them and turn them to make a bigger block. So I'm going to show you some ways to elevate them and then also how to put them together. And my hope is that you will do this along with me throughout the entire year of 2026, and we will have a finished quilt at the end of the year. And I would love to see yours. I'm going to show you mine along the way, and I'm just going to give you my own little tips and tricks along the way. So let's get started. The first one, let's just talk about floating stitches. So in the instructions for some of the rail fence, it suggests sewing them together with a floating stitch. So that gives you an elevated look. And if you're not familiar with I'm looking for my sample. If you're not familiar with what a floating stitch is, this is a floating stitch. You can tell that it doesn't have a stitch between the stitches. So that's what makes them look like floating stitches. So it's a really neat technique. It's an exclusive technique that we have with the SVP machines. So we're going to do a little bit of that. And then I've got some other ways I've done it as well. So I have some of them already sewn together, and then we're going to sew some together as well. So this first one I have here is completely done with floating stitches. This is going to be the long rail fences block. And this is going to be on page 39 of the instructions. I'm trying to find the right way to show it. So it's basically 3 rail fences together, and then you twist and turn them. But I assembled them using floating stitches. So I did each block. So I did 1 block of 3, the middle block of 3, and then this one. And then I attached them together. So this should finish out, just for your reference, and it's in the instructions as well. This should finish out 8.5 by 24 inches. And so that's this one here. And again, this is just, I've got it upside down because I've got my boots. I have little rain boots on it, and I have been showing them upside down. So if you have directional fabric, make sure that it's going the way that you want to. I believe in the instructions, they actually have 2 vertical ones on the ends versus horizontal. But because I wanted to have these, this boot fabric, this rain boot fabric, I kind of switched it up. So again, you have that creative freedom to change it how you would like. So this is what I did. Again, just sewing the 3 blocks together, the 3 strips, and then attaching them all with floating stitches. And we're going to go through floating stitches and how to change them a little bit, but then how to use them as well. I'm going to show you some of those. But I wanted to show you, this is going to be one of the blocks. So that'll be the first one you complete. And then the next one is going to be 4 sets of 3 sewn together into one big block. So I already have some of those done, but so I've got 2 sections. I have this section here, and we're going to sew these together here in a second. And then I have another section here. So we're going to sew these 2 pieces together. But the difference with this one was I created my own fabric right here. So in the middle of all of my fabrics, I have a stitched out fabric. So how I did that, because that's a lot of like sewing, straight line sewing on a big piece of fabric. I just basically got a big piece of fabric, added stabilizer, and did all these stitches. But I didn't sew it. My machine did it. I actually did it in embroidery mode in this hoop right here. This is the 465 by 360 hoop that comes with the Designer Epic 3. It's the largest hoop that comes with it. There is the mega turnable, which is the bigger one, but this is a huge space to work within. I was able to get 4 strips out of, actually 5. I had one more. I was able to get all 4 strips out of this plus one more. But isn't this neat? I just went in and picked different stitches. I picked running stitches, satin stitches, decorative stitches, and you make them a certain length in create sequence is what I did. No, I did it in Stitch Creator. Stitch Creator or create sequence. I'm sorry. I did it in create sequence is what I did. I went through and just picked stitches and just did it in create sequence. You could definitely do it in Shape Creator as well. There's definitely multiple ways around doing it. But I did all of that on my screen, on my machine, and then I sent it over and embroidered it out. So I didn't have to do the sewing. I just had to change out the thread. And it turned out so well. So I ended up with one big piece that I cut down into the size that I needed for these pieces. So that's another way. In the instructions, I think it suggests that you sew these together with floating stitches also. I did not, only because I thought these are so busy already. I didn't want to add floating stitches to that as well. So these are all sewn together with just a normal seam allowance, which we'll talk about that in a moment as well. But again, you have that creative freedom with this quilt. It's a really good sampler quilt. It's a really good scrap buster quilt. If you've got lots of just scrap fabric, you can definitely use those as well. And then there's one more quilt block that's 3 rail fences, and we're gonna sew those together in a moment with just floating stitches. But I wanna talk about floating stitches real quick. So when you stitch out a floating stitch that is pre-set on the machine, let me show you those really quick right here. I'm gonna back out of create sequence. So if we go all the way to the end, right there we go. My fingers are cold today. We're going to go to specialty stitches and then J4. These are going to be your floating stitches right here. And when you stitch them out, this is what you're going to get. Let me switch. Let me see. I wanted to find the best angle so you could see this a little bit. So do you see how you can sort of see the white fabric between them? They're not very dense, which is okay. It's fine the way that it is. But I want them to look a little bit more like this. Do you see right here how you can't see the fabric and they look fuller? So I'm going to show you how we can make this stitch look a little bit fuller right here. Again, you can stitch out your floating stitches just with the default stitch that it's there. I just wanted to show you some other ways that you could elevate it a little bit more. So back over here, let's choose a floating stitch we're going to stitch out. Let's do the diamond. So you can see that there's a little bit of space between all of these stitches as it goes, and that's okay. You can definitely, again, stitch it out the way that it is right there. But there's a way to make the density a little bit tighter. So down here, we have this toggle button between length right here, and we can change the density. So I'm going to just go down 1. I just went to 0.2, and you know that it's changed when that's lit up right here versus not over here. And we can go back and you can see that it's a little bit fuller, and you can go 1 more and really get it full. So if you look back at my example, again, this first one right here, let me let it focus. This first one is just the default stitch. And then this next one is going to be a little bit fuller. And then I even did these at the bottom that are the 2 density a little bit lower. So these were the 0.1 or 0.2 or the original 0.3. So just something really neat. And you can do this with a lot of the stitches. So after I stitched this out, let me get one of my other ones close up here. So if you look at this yellow bubble stitch, do you see this right here? This is the default stitch that it's at, setting that it's at. And you can see the white through it. You can see the thread through this, which I think even if we made this a little bit denser, you would still see it, but it would be a little bit tighter and not look so open. So again, this is fine how it is. That's the original setting, but I just want to make it look a little bit fuller. So we're going to do that, and we're going to sew these 3 strips of rail fence together. So this block is actually going to be in the top, the top right of the block or of the quilt. That's going to be this one here. And it's just 3 pieces, and we're going to sew them together. When you sew together floating stitches, let me show you something on the machine here. If you've never done floating stitches before, if you come up here and touch the H crown and you go to Joy OS Advisor down here, you can go to sewing, and then we're going to go to, right here, exclusive sewing techniques. And if we scroll over just a little bit, you will see floating stitches. So it's going to show you how to assemble floating stitches if you had one piece of fabric. So you can take one piece, fold it in half, sew down the side, and then open it up and have a floating stitch. Or if you were joining, so that's what we did with this one. Hold on one second. That's what we did with this one, where we had two pieces of fabric and we joined them together. So we are going to touch this, and we're just going to clear our ongoing work. We don't really have anything going, but it's going to give you step-by-step instructions on how to do this. You can also find this information in the Creativate app. So you can, even if you don't have a Designer Epic 3 or you have one of the other machines, you can go in there and look at all of the resources that are available to all of the machines. All of the techniques, how to do those types of things can be found in that app as well. So the same information you can get there so that you can access it. You can look at it on your phone, you can look at it on your tablet and still see it in the same way versus on your screen. Or if you don't have one of these machines and you want to just see, hey, what do these other machines have? Maybe you're looking at upgrading, things like that. So back over here, it's going to give you step by step. The one thing that it doesn't have that I will suggest, it doesn't tell you to have stabilizer. We want to have stabilizer. And so we're going to go through here, and right here, you can find videos step by step on how to do it. Again, I'm going to show you in just a moment, but here's your two pieces of fabric, right sides together, like you were doing a normal seam. I want you to lift up the IDF right there. We're going to switch out our foot to the B foot. What's really nice is when we do these floating stitches, we're actually going to use the edge of the foot to sew these together. Do you see that right there? So it's a really good guide as you're going to do that. And it's just going to keep going right there. So once you're done, then you would open it up, and it's like magic. It's really cool. So on the back side of these stitches, I'll show it to you once we do the first one, but on the back side, that's where those adjoining stitches between the stitches are. So you don't see those connecting stitches here. But if we folded this back together, it's going to be hard because I've got my stabilizer there. But those are our joining stitches right there, but it's on the back side. That's what makes it look like magic. So we are going to come back over here, and within those instructions also, it's going to pull out all of the floating stitches that you have available. So you don't have to go find them in the stitch menu. You can access them all right here. So again, we're going to choose the diamond this time, and we're going to get rid of this. And I'm just going to turn my density down just one and just make it just a little bit closer together. Now we're going to stitch this out. But up here, it tells you should have stabilizer. These are thicker stitches. You definitely want to have stabilizer. So I think it was just something that might be missing in those instructions, but we're going to make it work for today. So I have my three pieces here. I want them all sewn together. I'm just going to take two of them right now. We're going to put them right sides together, just like this. And I have some stabilizer. I just have tearaway. That's all you need. I just have a little 1-inch strip of tearaway. And we're going to place it behind our material, but we don't want it to really be even. We want that stabilizer to be on the majority behind our fabric right there. So just a little bit of it hanging out. We're going to attach our B foot, and I have decorative embroidery thread in my top and bobbin. I just have yellow because that's the color I decided. We're going to line this up here. Let me mention something too. So with this one, with this particular block, it wants you to use the edge of the foot. But what would be really neat is on some of them, we needed on these, on this one, we needed to do a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So when you have that stabilizer under there and your fabric, you can't see that 1/4 inch marking. Let's see if you can see over here. You can't see it there, but there's a 1/4 inch line reference guide right here. You can't see that when you have all this on here. So let me show you something on the screen. Oh, not that one. Right here. We can adjust that laser guide. So let's turn our projection on. And it got dim, and look, you can see my projection came on. I can see my stitch and my grid. But we want a stitch guide. So let's come down here to our stitch guide, and we're going to change this to 6.35. which is 1/4 of an inch in millimeters. And what that's going to do now is if we come back over here, it's kind of hard to see. Let me see if we can make them a little bit brighter too sometimes. Let's see. Brightness, that maybe help a little bit more. But I don't know if you can see, but there's a red line right here. Let's see if we can zoom in a little bit for you to see that. I hope you can see that. There's a red line right there. And that's going to be my 1/4 inch. So for these other blocks that I did here, that's what I did. I put my fabric together, had my stabilizer behind, and I lined my fabric up with that guide right there. So you can still get your 1/4 inch without using your 1/4 inch foot. But for these 3 blocks, we're going to use the edge of the foot. So I'm going to turn that stitch guide line off because we don't need that. And we can keep the grid on though, because that grid line lines up right there. We can see ahead of time where we're going to be. And then we're just going to start sewing. And it's going to go super simple and easy. We're just guiding our fabric as we go. We don't have to worry about anything. Our fabric is not shifting. This is not a directional stitch to go left or right. So we're just keeping everything straight in line as we go. If you have questions, please feel free to add those in the chat. Anything like that throughout the year as we're going, I will continue to check those and answer any questions as I see them if I can. So just keep that in mind as well. We're going along this journey together. So I want it to be very interactive. So we're going to finish this one out here. If you've done floating stitches before, I would love to hear what you've used them for. So again, I have used them to assemble 2 pieces of fabric together like this. I've used them to assemble just one piece where I wanted to add a little extra something in the middle of it. I think that's always fun to do. If you have a block that you need to make and you just want to add a little bit of something extra to it, you can definitely fold that fabric in half, create your own sewing. As you go, I just want to make sure we're lined up and straight still here. Yeah. So just like that. I want to show you something too on my other block when this is done. This one's almost done here. Because you really can just pay attention to which direction your stitches are going as well. So that with the diamond, it doesn't matter. It's the same on both sides. So we're at the end of our fabric. We're going to stop there. And this is the magic part. So look at this. Isn't that really cool? So you can see all of those stitches are lined up with this stitch right here, but we're not going to see that. What we're going to do here is we're going to just pull this open, and I'm going to do it. Let me turn this off so you can see it, and I'll back up a little bit here. So we're just going to pull this apart, and it's magic. Look at this. It is so neat, y'all. This is one of my favorite techniques that we have. Look at that. Isn't that so cool? And you could definitely go press this with an iron, but that actually, I'm kind of going to pat myself on the back. That turned out really well. I don't have to do too much pressing there. Let me show you here. So just like that. And it gives it a little something extra versus just a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So neat. I love it. All right. And then we're going to add one more to the other side of that. But I wanted to show you. So one of the stitches is a triangle. So I had it go one way down here and another way right there. So I thought that was neat too. So just think about those little things. It just adds a little something extra. I changed the color on all of them as I went. So like these are red, these are blue, and those, or I'm sorry, these are pink, not red. These are red and then green. So lots of different ways. There's also floating stitches like this. Do you see how these are just stitched bar lines basically? So those are fun as well. So let's sew one more strip onto this and let's pick a different stitch. We'll pick a different stitch, but I'm going to keep my same yellow fabric. But let's come back over here. I want to stitch out one of those other ones to show you as well. So just one of the line ones. These are some of my favorite ones, and I have not done this one down here. So let's do this one. It kind of looks like an hourglass. So again, still using the B-fit. It wants you to have stabilizer. So we are going to line these up right sides together like that. And again, in the instructions, it has all of the cut measurements and things like that as well. Each of these blocks, they're all rectangle blocks, but they're all different sizes. Some of them are 3.5, some are 3 1/4. I think these are 4.5. I don't remember off the top of my head. So we're going to add another piece of stabilizer right behind here with just a little bit of it hanging off the edge. We're going to line our fabric up with the edge of our foot. Let's turn our projection back on because I think it's helpful to just have that reference ahead of time before you get up to the foot when you're sewing those together. Let's zoom in a little bit closer here so you can see them as they go. And then we're just going to start going. And this one I think will go a little bit quicker because it's not so much a satin. This one I did not adjust the density on because it's not a satin stitch. It's just doing stitches over top of each other. It's kind of like a bar tack. The density is already there. So I didn't make any adjustments on this one in particular. It's just not necessary. But again, you don't need to change those density adjustments. It's definitely just an option. It's a personal preference of mine to just make them look a little bit fuller. I really want them to stand out on some of my blocks. So again, if there's any questions, things like that, feel free to type those in the chat. We'll get those answered for you. If you've made this quilt already, this quilt came out, I think it came out about a year ago. But when Amy and I were talking about what types of videos that we could do, I was like, we haven't done like a quilt of the block video. And so we thought this would be really fun to do with you all, and just each month, no pressure. You've got the whole month to work on it. We'll do a couple different types of blocks that go together each time. And since these are all rail fences, I was like, let's just do all of these in one. It's pretty quick. So almost done here. A few more. Super simple and easy to assemble. So if you're not a quilter or you're new to quilting, this would be a great, intro into that without going too wild and crazy. And these are good beginner blocks to start with as well. So let's back up just a little bit here. I'm going to turn my projection off. Make a little bit brighter under here. And so again, we're just going to come over here and pull this back. Look at this. This is so fun. I love how they look like little, like that you hand sewed it together. You hand tacked it together. And again, you can get your iron, press this down, but that actually went together pretty well there. So do you see that right there? Isn't that so neat? Look, I love the floating stitches. They are one of my absolute favorite. So this block should measure out to, this is the long rail fence block. This was the long rail fences because there's multiple on here. This one's just one. So this one's going to measure out to 12.5 by 12.5 finished. And again, all of these dimensions are in the instructions as well that we'll have linked. But that's how we assemble them. Super quick and easy. So the last thing we're going to do is we're going to take the rest of this. I just wanted to show you. I just wanted to just assemble a little bit of it together for you. This is the inspirational collage block. And at the end, I'll go through the names of these again and then tell you, what page they're on in the instructions, because there's a lot of pages for the instructions, because again, there's enough for us to do the whole year, and we're doing more than one block each month. So there's definitely a lot of blocks there. I'm going to change out my thread really quick to sewing thread, because when I sewed these blocks together, this inspirational collage one, I just did a 1/4 inch because again, I felt like the, with my embroidered, my made fabric, the fabric that I made with the embroidery, was just busy enough on its own that I didn't need, my thread's getting caught up. Hold on, what are we doing here? I felt like, sorry, my thread looped around on itself. I felt like it was busy enough that I didn't need to add in sorry, I'm losing my train of thought as I'm trying to do this, that I didn't want to add in the floating stitches to it. So I just sewed these together with a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So 1 second here. My thread's getting all tangled around over here. There we go. Okay, and I'm going to change out to my 1/4 inch piecing foot. This is one of my favorite feet that I probably use the most. I love this foot, and it has that flange on the side, and it's got a little bit more of an oval for the opening, so you can do that scant 1/4 inch if you wanted to as well. Here is the important thing, because I did this when I was assembling some of these blocks pre when I was practicing them. Make sure you change your stitch. So I started to sew with this 1/4 inch piecing foot, and I still had one of my floating stitches selected. So we're just gonna, oh, not that one. We're gonna come back over here and just go back and select just a straight stitch. So don't forget about that. It's the little things, y'all. So I have my 2 sections of blocks already together here, and we're going to sew all of these together with a 1/4 inch. Let's backtrack really quick. I want to talk about something. So in the instructions, there's the instructions, but I found that I needed to make a few adjustments with some of the seam allowances that I used to get the finished size that they needed. So let's talk about that really quick. With the other blocks, they all turned out with the rail fence blocks. So like this one and this one, they turned out fine doing the seam allowance that they suggested, a 1/4 inch. But for this one, we're going to actually do a little bit bigger seam allowance. So when I assembled, you've got one block here. Just imagine this one's not here. You have these 4 different blocks. When you assemble each of these, it says to use a 1/4 inch. It's a little bit small. So I actually use the edge of the foot. I use the edge of the B foot when I assembled 1, 2, 3, or when I assembled 1, 2, 3, when I put those together. And then you're going to square those up to 8.5 by 8.5. Okay. So again, you're going to have your one block sewn together right here, and we're going to square that up to 8.5 by 8.5. Then you're going to attach 2 of them together, and you're going to twist them so that they're not all the same way. And then the same thing here. We're going to attach 2 of them. But when I attach these, I did a 1/4 inch. So I know it's kind of confusing. We're going back and forth, but it's easier for me to tell you to adjust the seam allowance than it is to change the cut measurements. So again, when you sew the one block together, these 3 pieces, you're going to use the edge of the B foot for your seam allowance. When you sew the blocks together, we're going to use a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So that's what I'm going to do when I assemble these 2 blocks here. So we are going to line these up, and I have pressed them in opposite directions so that I can easily inset these 2 right here. And then we're just going to pin them together real easy. And we're going to sew these together with our 1/4 inch seam allowance. If you don't have a 1/4 inch seam allowance, but you have the laser guide, again, set your laser guide up to a 1/4 inch measurement, or just use the measurement that is on the stitch plate as well. I love this. I didn't have my IDF engaged. It just popped up on my screen that I needed to engage that. So we have that engaged there. And we're just going to sew all the way down, making sure, I like to stop with my needle down when I'm making adjustments, making sure that our fabric, shifting there a little bit, is lined up all the way down. And when you get to the seam, we're going to pull our pin out because we don't want to sew over pins. Make sure everything is still lined up, and just finish all the way down. So really simple and easy. You did the fun floating stitches on the other ones, and this one we just did our own little spin on it. So then you end up with your corners matching up perfectly right there. So let's talk about, let's just do a little recap here. So this is going to be the first block. This is the inspirational collage quilt block. This is going to be on page 11 of your instructions. This is going to finish 16.5 by 16.5, or it's going to measure out 16.5 by 16. Finish, it'll be 16 by 16. And with this one, I made my own fabric in embroidery mode with sewing stitches. I made my own plaid fabric, just like this, all in the hoop. You don't have to use this big of a hoop. You could definitely do this in any size hoop. But this is something fun. And I'm going to use this and make it into a little zipper pouch now too. I'm just going to fold it in half and still use this. So there's that. That's the first one, inspirational collage block. The next one is going to be the long rail fences, multiple fences block right here. This way again, I've got it upside down. This is going to be 8.5 by 24 this way, like that. And we use just floating stitches here. We followed the instructions, did a 1/4 inch seam for our floating stitches and lined up. You may need to square it up just a little bit if there's, a little bit of one way or the other. But again, 8.5 by 24, that's in your instructions. And then this is going to be the last one, the long rail fences block. Got a thread here. This one is going to be on page 40, so right after the other one. And this is 12.5 by 12.5 finish. So again, I'll press this and cut those on the end. But that's going to be January's blocks to make. So if you make them, I would love to see them. Feel free to send us a message, put it in the comments. If you have questions or need anything, I am here along the way to help you. Amy is too. We are happy and we would love to help you make this quilt along with us for the year. So thank you again, and I will see you next month with some more blocks for the next quilt. And this is a free project, y'all. This is not anything you have to pay for. This is a free quilt. You don't get free quilt patterns very often. So you can find it on the Creative 8 website, and I believe we're going to have it linked in the description as well. So thank you so much, and we'll see you in February.